Hi there, everyone. My name is Christian Eschbach, and welcome to the last episode of an Iron Maiden triple shot. And we are going to finish off with a little Blaze Bayley. I love me some Blaze Bayley. Blaze Bayley is awesome. Sort of. He's not Bruce Dickinson. Who's Bruce Dickinson? Nobody's Bruce Dickinson. But he did release two decent albums with Iron Maiden. Well, one really decent album and one I don't own it and I haven't listened to it in over a decade. Maybe two album. Should get around to picking up X Factor. So, if you haven't guessed, we're talking about Virtual X. Or Virtual 11, sorry. Virtual XI, Virtual 11. My apologies. This is a really cool and interesting album. Musically phenomenal album. Lyrically, I tune out a little bit on the lyrics. This is a slower album by Maiden standards. More intricate, more kind of personal, definitely less speedy, in your face, aggressive. Unlike Bruce, Blaze is a different vocalist. Slightly lower register, a little more slower with his singing, a little bit of a slower presentation, a little more methodical, I want to say, in his presentation of singing. Whereas Bruce is just like this force of nature to be reckoned with, you know? But I really do like Blaze's voice on here. I also want to point out that, yes, Bruce is definitely known for doing a few of the early songs, you know, from Paul Di'Anno's repertoire, like Running Free, or Iron Maiden, or Wrathchild, sometimes Sanctuary. You know, there's a couple tracks from the early days that he'll do. Because, you know, those were standards that were established ahead of time. But when Bruce came back to the band, he did something that vocalists usually don't do. He started covering songs. He started doing, not covering, I mean, it's the band, right? But he started doing songs, certain songs, at least one, which was specifically a Blaze track, and he does it great. And we're going to get into that as we get into this. So the album opens up with Future Real. It's a cool way to open up the album. It's a decent tune. I enjoy it. Is it a great overarching Maiden song? No, but it is still a good, solid song. Opens up the album great. But it leads perfectly into the next track, which I absolutely love. And I would love to see Bruce do this one live, and he hasn't. The Angel and the Gambler. This might be the only single they released. I know I've got the single for it. The video was really cool at the time. I mean, by today's standards, the CG graphics would be a joke. But at the time, it was really cool. It was really fun. It was, 1998. Let's keep that in mind. And, just the whole song, really that good, evil, played out over a poker game. Who doesn't love that? I love that, man. It's good stuff, man. Christopher, Spanish Train, and Other Stories, good stuff. That leads into Lightning Strikes Twice. This one's not a bad tune. It's just not the Maiden you'd expect. Like, this is definitely, the one thing about this album is it's not your typical Maiden album, which is cool. Sometimes it hurts, though, because Lightning Strikes Twice sounds like it kind of wants to be a typical Maiden kind of song. It sounds like something you might hear off of Fear of the Dark. Kind of sounds like something you might have heard on X Factor. Kind of, sort of, but at the same time, not really. You know, they were experimenting a little bit, but not quite enough. Now, remember when I was talking earlier about Bruce Dickinson doing one of these songs, and one of the reasons why Bruce Dickinson does one of these songs is he actually is really upset he did not originally do the song with the band because he loved it that much. And that is The Klansman. Oh, man. Blaze does this great job on the Klansman. I absolutely love it on this album. It's my Angel and the Gambler and the Klansman neck and neck for my two favorite songs off this album. Um, but just brilliant. I mean, absolutely fantastic song. And you can almost tell that almost that it was written for Bruce. It was meant for Bruce to sing it. Because Blaze hits all these great notes, hits all these spots, but there's these couple parts where you're just waiting for the vocals to go into Bruce soaring territory, and you're waiting for it, and it doesn't quite do it. And then you get to see Bruce Dickinson do it live. Whoa, damn! I wish I would have gotten to see Blaze live. The problem is, when Blaze was touring with the band, I wasn't really into Maiden enough at the time. But I would have loved to have seen Blaze doing a lot of the older Maiden stuff to see what he could do and how he handled it. The problem is, they were playing small, rinky-dink venues from a Maiden perspective at that time. Like, they were back to club level almost at this point. At least in North America, they were at club level. There's a bar in Detroit, famous bar in Detroit. It closed. It might be reopened now. It closed years ago, then it did a reopen kind of thing. It was called Harpo's. It has a horrible reputation for being dirty, gungy, blah, blah, blah. But it was the place to go to see hard rock and metal acts. And Maiden played there with Bayley, and if I had been slightly older than I was, because in 98 I wasn't legal drinking age yet, and Harpo's wasn't easy to reach. It's not like I could just grab the tunnel bus, take it across, and, you know, Harpo's is right there, like downtown Detroit or anything, you know, in the main core. Harpo's was out a little bit, so you actually had to drive to get there, and once again, not the greatest reputation. Otherwise, I would have gone with my buddy Drew, who was legal age at the time, and he did briefly contemplate it, but it was that getting to the venue that was complicated. But the Klansman, great song. Absolutely great song. Fantastic. Then you get to When Two Worlds Collide. Another song, really kind of cool and interesting song. I don't mind it. Great song musically. Once again, this album musically is phenomenal. Different from Maiden a little bit. Not a lot, just enough. A little too rockish, kind of. It's like they were trying to go rockish, but not the old style rock they did, like not the early 80s punky kind of high energy rock. It was kind of more a reserved kind of rock almost. Yeah. The Educated Fool is a filler to me. I'm not into it, really. Don't look to the eyes of strangers. Really interesting. I really like what they do with it. Kind of got a staccatoed kind of vibe to it. The way that it's presented. You know, the way it's being played, it's almost like it's meant for a staccatoed piano or something like that, as opposed to, you know, some nice light guitar work or whatnot. Maybe even a little string plucking on a violin. But what they do with the guitars on it is fantastic. Because as I'm describing it, what I'm describing is what they're doing on the guitars, which, you know. And then the album finishes off with Como Estas Amigos. I dig the tune, but it's definitely not the song they should have ended this album with. Yes and no. Maiden's really bad about choosing last songs for the album. I will say that. That is one thing I have always thought about Maiden. They always close their albums out piss poorly. Every time. It's like, okay, we got this one track left over. Just throw it at the end. No one's going to listen all the way to the end anyways. You know, it's kind of how it feels to me. Like Maiden always kind of does the end of their albums, or a lot of the end of their albums. You know, there's probably one or two exceptions out there, but there's not many. The Klansman would have been better as an album closer. The Angel and the Gambler would have been a better album closer, just something with more energy than Como Estas Amigos. I get why they closed it with that. It's just not the song I want to hear at the end. You know, like when that song's finished, I'm like, really? That's it? That's the end of the album? That's how they closed it? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Anyways, folks. So that's it. That's the end of my Iron Maiden triple shot at this point. Leave me your comments. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, peace, love, and take care.